Welcome, I'm Alex Case Cohen with the Oreille Conservation District, and we are out observing recent projects for the Voluntary Stewardship Program. The efforts of the Voluntary Stewardship Program are to protect and enhance critical areas within Oreille County. So critical areas being wetlands, steep slopes, frequently flooded areas, fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas, and critical aquifer recharge areas. Today, we are with John Driver of the county, and we are currently standing next to a creek. I believe it is a perennial creek. We're also in a field that was recently no-till planted, and we're going to talk with John about his purpose for planting no-till timothy and its impacts on these critical areas on his property.
All right, I'm John Driver. I've been farming in Oreille County my entire life. All I've ever done in the summer is put up hay, and that's part of the family operation that goes back to 1926. My degree's in agribusiness economics and management from Washington State University. I worked for Washington State University for a couple of years, and now I'm back to the county for full-time farming.
How did you become interested in planting no-till?
So the journey to no-till started with some neighbors that I saw using the tools and the techniques. I was able to test out the drill a couple of years ago, and I found it to be a great tool. For a variety of plantings, we're working on fairly diverse rotations, trying to get back to our cash crop that's the timothy. So the field that we're standing in right now is oats. It would have been conventionally tilled last year, but it won't see a plow or a disc maybe ever again. So just trying to break up some of that long established sod, and then getting back into that timothy rotation with grains in between. The biggest benefit that we have to the no-till system, and especially in a drought year, is the moisture conservation that we get. Had we conventionally tilled this ground, there would be nothing growing here. Where with the no-till system, we were able to conserve all the moisture and have that moisture reserved for that plant to draw on.
Mm-hmm. So do you want to talk a little bit more about moisture, comparing last year where we had ample moisture and what we're seeing this year, and how no-till is really proving to be beneficial?
Yeah, so as we think about the differences from year to year, maybe 2020 was the wettest spring I've ever seen in my entire life. I think we had 6 inches of rain in June. No-till in that scenario actually works great. Moisture covers up just about any sin that you could commit. When we get to a dry year like 2021, no-till works, and no-till is the only thing that's going to work in that scenario. Mm-hmm. Comparing and contrasting a little bit more, if we'd have done conventional tillage in 2020, it would have been fine. It would have worked just fine in terms of moisture. Mm-hmm. That is not the case for 2021.
Can you tell us just the basic differences between a no-till operation and a conventionally tilled operation?
Mm-hmm. So with a conventional tillage, common around here is not even using a plow because of the soil types that we have. The clay doesn't respond to a plow really well, and it creates a really hard plow.
Plow pan.
Plow pan, thank you. It creates a very hard plow pan. So it's very common here to just disc and cross disc and disc and disc some more, and then come back in with a drill and pack it. That's very common here. With the no-till, it's much simpler. It's a lot less fuel. With the size of drill that I have, maybe it's not any faster, but it's also not slower. It's a single pass with an opener that cuts open the ground, drops the seed in, presses the seed into the soil, and then closes up over the top with a heavy roller behind, and it works.
So we're standing next to Davis Creek.
Yeah.
So we're still unsure if there are fish, but it is certainly a perennial stream. So what are the impacts of choosing no-till over conventional tillage on the creek?
Right. So in this case, we stayed back off of the creek quite a ways. There's already a well-established riparian zone. So when we did the conventional tillage, we didn't have any erosion to speak of. But you could definitely see in another spot on a a steeper hillside, which I have, and I'm going to no-till still, on a steeper hillside where you could absolutely have erosion issues with conventional tillage breaking up all that soil.
And so with increased erosion, you have increased sedimentation in your waterways, which hinders or detracts from the potential habitat for the fish that we have in this county. So the less soil, the less sediment in our rivers and streams, the better.
And less nutrients.
Right.
Because anytime
exactly.
you're losing soil, you're losing nutrients that you very intentionally put there, and that's just money down the stream,
Right.
which is not good from the farmer's perspective.
Right. Right, we are taking a look at these oats coming in. Tell us what we're looking at.
Yeah, so the first thing that you should see is the stubble from last year. This is the second year in oats. We cut up fairly high to keep good ground cover. That does a couple of things. That helps the snow stay in place over the winter. That's really important when you're talking about no-till, is getting that moisture in the ground and keeping that snow consistent. Sometimes you'll see snow will blow, and having good ground cover helps with that. It also slows down the wind going over the soil surface, and that reduces evaporation. So again, a lot of this exercise is about keeping the moisture in the ground, and that ground cover helps with that. The no-till drill cuts through that ground cover, so whatever stubble was left from last year, the drill slices right through it, and you can see the rows where the seed was dropped and closed, and and the rows are very consistent going back without the hairpinning or other issues that you would have with a lot of trash in a conventional till.
We're here with Bill Kelly. Bill is a participant of the Voluntary Stewardship program. He has actually recently completed a cost share project for a no-till hay planting on one of his fields. But Bill has done ample work previously on his property. So Bill, do you want to tell us a little bit about this place and what all you've done here?
Well, I've tried broadcast seeding to try and get some of the thin spots recovering in my fields, and that works somewhat if you do it in November and the snows fall and pack it down. But I'm hopeful that John Paul's no-till drilling improved this side of the hayfield to our west. And additionally, I've done lots of thinning of the woods around. I had a commercial logger thin behind me. I've got 20 acres behind me, and he did that a couple of years ago. And then I've been thinning in small wood lots to the east and west of us here.
Great. And he's also implemented a wetland reserve project with the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And he's protected about how many acres of wetlands, would you say?
There's 240 acres in the wetland reserve, but that includes 60 acres of woods behind us, and then the wetlands that you see going diagonally through the farm and that western field.
Right.
And I think I was the first, maybe the first in the state, but certainly the first in the county to enroll in the WRP program back in the 90s, whenever it was.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been in place a long time.
So tell us a little bit about what you saw this morning as you were enjoying your coffee, most likely. What wildlife was at your door?
Well, this morning there was a deer out one window, an elk out another. Yesterday there was a moose wandering through. I rarely see rabbits, and there was a rabbit hopping across the backyard and a turtle crawling across the road. So I had a variety of solitary species this morning.
Great. Yeah, he's created a really nice oasis here for himself and for the local wildlife.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. I've got a pretty nice view of Kalispell Mountain and see wildlife in the fields most days, and it's nice to be here. I enjoy this old place.
Great. So we're out with Bill Kelly on his recent cost share project. It's a no-till planting of 90% Timothy grass and 10% clover. But Bill, do you want to tell us about this haven that you're stewarding here?
Well, they say that diversity is the key in nature of keeping things healthy, and I like to consider the fact that I've got such diverse ecosystems here with the forest in the back, and then I've got 100 acres of wetland drainage coming through the middle of the farm, and then I've got the hay fields. And so I think having those three different types of ecosystems, if you will, produces a lot of variety. I see elk and deer in the field most days. I have 20-30 species of bird life living in the wetlands, and back in the woods every fall elk come and the cows have their babies back there, and so sometimes I get to see the young elk calves romping in the fields.
So cool. What Bill has done in this field is, so he's direct seeded, similar to what John Driver has done, and John was actually contracted to work with Bill on this. But why did you choose to go with a no-till option?
Well, I really don't want to disc in this field, this whole western field, because of the potential camas disturbance. I have lots of camas here in the area, and they didn't come up very strong this spring, but normally this whole slope would be full of the purple camas flowers, and so because of that I don't want to disc up, so I'm trying no-till and broadcast seeding in the thin spots to try and get a stronger stand of Timothy going in this field.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Bill.